Every industrial empire has an origin story. Most of them involve someone with money or connections or a head start. John Cockerill had none of that. He was the son of a wandering English blacksmith, born in a small Lancashire mill town, who by his death at just 49 had built one of the largest, most technologically advanced industrial complexes anywhere in Europe, and helped turn a brand new country into the world's second industrial power. He gambled everything more than once. He built machines, ran factories, courted kings, and eventually died far from home, chasing one more deal to save what he'd built. This is the full story of John Cockerill, the man behind the name that still marks the landscape of Wallonia 2 centuries later. Welcome back to Belgium Retrotech, exploring the machines that built Belgium. John Cockerill was born on August 3, 1790, in Haslingden, a small textile town in Lancashire, England, the kind of place built entirely around the rhythm of the mills, where the sound of looms was simply the sound of everyday life. His father, William Cockerill, was a blacksmith with an unusual gift, a talent for building and improving machines, particularly the machines used in the textile trade. But William was also restless, ambitious, never quite satisfied to stay in one place if there was opportunity somewhere else. Before John was even born, William had already chased that opportunity across an entire continent. He'd been recommended to the imperial court of Catherine the Great and settled in St. Petersburg as a skilled craftsman, building models and mechanisms for the Russian Empire itself. It seemed for a while like his big break. Then Catherine died. Her successor, Paul I, imprisoned William after he failed to finish a model on time, an alarming taste of just how precarious life could be when your fortunes depended entirely on royal favor. William escaped to Sweden, working for a time as a civil engineer building canal locks, but that line of work never suited him. He kept listening for word of where the real opportunity might be. By the time John was born back in Lancashire, his father was still searching, a pattern of instability that would define John's entire childhood. In 1797, when John was just 7 years old, a downturn hit the British weaving trade, and the Cockerill family made the decision to leave England altogether, crossing into mainland Europe in search of steadier ground. British law at the time actually banned the export of mechanized spinning technology. The government understood exactly how valuable that knowledge was and wanted to keep it at home. William found ways around that restriction anyway, quietly building spinning machines at a French factory instead, using knowledge that was technically forbidden to leave the country. For young John, all of this meant a childhood defined by movement, risk, and machines. Different countries, different languages, a father who was brilliant but never quite settled, always one setback away from starting over. It was a strange, unstable education, but it turned out to be exactly the preparation he needed.
At the age of 12, John was sent to join his father in Verviers, a town in what would later become Belgium, where William had finally found the success that had eluded him for so long. Verviers sat at the center of the region's woolen textile trade, and William Cockerill had partnered with Simonis and Biolier, one of the most important wool producers in the entire Low Countries, building the machinery that powered their mills. For the first time in years, the Cockerill family had something like stability. John grew up inside this world, quite literally learning the business on the factory floor, watching machines get designed, built, tested, and improved, day after day. There was no formal industrial school for this kind of knowledge. You learned it by standing next to the machines themselves. By 1807, at just 17 years old, John and his older brother Charles James were trusted enough to take over management of a factory in nearby Liège, while their father continued expanding operations elsewhere in the region. 17 years old, and already responsible for running an industrial operation, it tells you something about how quickly the Cockerill children were expected to grow up. In 1813, William formally retired, handing full control of the family business to his 2 sons. That same year, John's personal life took a defining turn as well. He married Jeanne Frédérique Pasteur, daughter of a prominent industrialist from Aachen, in what became a genuine family alliance rather than just a wedding. In a detail that says a great deal about how tightly these industrial families were woven together, John's brother Charles James married Jeanne's sister Caroline on that very same day, a double wedding binding the Cockerill and Pasteur families permanently, in business as much as in blood. By his early 20s then, John Cockerill was already a married man, an experienced machine builder, and a business owner in his own right. But the biggest chapter of his story, the one that would define his name for centuries afterward, hadn't started yet. A palace for an industrialist. The turning point came in 1816 and 1817, when John and Charles James entered into a remarkable partnership, going into business directly with William, Prince of Orange, the future King William II of the Netherlands. This wasn't a small favor from a minor noble. It was a direct alliance with the royal house that ruled the territory the Cockerills were operating in. For two brothers who had grown up watching their father's fortunes rise and collapse based on the whims of distant monarchs, striking their own deal with royalty directly must have felt like finally taking control of their own destiny. With that royal backing secured, the brothers acquired an extraordinary property, the Château de Seraing, once the summer residence of the Prince Bishops of Liège. Try to picture the scene: a palace built for churchmen and nobility, its gardens and grand rooms designed for quiet religious retreat, and two ambitious young industrialists moving in with plans to fill it with foundries, forges, and steam-driven machines. It's hard to imagine a more striking symbol of the changing era, the age of prince bishops giving way, quite literally, to the age of industry. The choice of location wasn't random either. The Seraing area offered exactly what heavy industry needed: rich coal deposits nearby, and an abundant skilled workforce drawn from generations of regional craftsmanship in metalworking and textiles. The transformation began almost immediately. Machine shops rose where drawing rooms once stood, furnaces were built where gardens had been tended, and in 1821 the site achieved something historic. The region's first coke-fired blast furnace was lit, bringing British-style iron-making technology onto the European continent for the first time at real industrial scale. It wasn't an instant success, though. Cockerill's early attempts at coal-based iron smelting proved genuinely difficult, and it took nearly 8 more years of trial and refinement before the process truly worked as intended. This is a detail worth sitting with. The popular image of industrial pioneers is often one of instant triumph, but the reality at Seraing was years of patient, frustrating engineering work before the breakthrough held. But the ambition itself was unmistakable from the very beginning. A former bishop's palace was becoming, in the words of observers at the time, the industrial wonder of Europe.
The turning point came in 1816 and 1817, when John and Charles James entered into a remarkable partnership, going into business directly with William, Prince of Orange, the future King William II of the Netherlands. This wasn't a small favor from a minor noble. It was a direct alliance with the royal house that ruled the territory the Cockerills were operating in. For two brothers who had grown up watching their father's fortunes rise and collapse based on the whims of distant monarchs, striking their own deal with royalty directly must have felt like finally taking control of their own destiny. With that royal backing secured, the brothers acquired an extraordinary property, the Château de Seraing, once the summer residence of the Prince Bishops of Liège. Try to picture the scene: a palace built for churchmen and nobility, its gardens and grand rooms designed for quiet religious retreat, and two ambitious young industrialists moving in with plans to fill it with foundries, forges, and steam-driven machines. It's hard to imagine a more striking symbol of the changing era, the age of prince bishops giving way, quite literally, to the age of industry. The choice of location wasn't random either. The Seraing area offered exactly what heavy industry needed: rich coal deposits nearby, and an abundant, skilled workforce drawn from generations of regional craftsmanship in metalworking and textiles. The transformation began almost immediately. Machine shops rose where drawing rooms once stood, furnaces were built where gardens had been tended, and in 1821 the site achieved something historic. The region's first coke-fired blast furnace was lit, bringing British-style iron-making technology onto the European continent for the first time at real industrial scale. It wasn't an instant success, though. Cockerill's early attempts at coal-based iron smelting proved genuinely difficult, and it took nearly 8 more years of trial and refinement before the process truly worked as intended. This is a detail worth sitting with. The popular image of industrial pioneers is often one of instant triumph, but the reality at Seraing were years of patient, frustrating engineering work before the breakthrough held. But the ambition itself was unmistakable from the very beginning. A former bishop's palace was becoming, in the words of observers at the time, the industrial wonder of Europe. The man who built everything. In 1820, Charles James retired from active management, stepping back and leaving John as the sole driving force behind the entire operation. From this point forward, Seraing's story becomes, in large part, John Cockerill's story alone. By the mid-1920s, what he had built there was already being described by observers of the time as the industrial wonder of Europe. And the range of what came out of that single site was staggering. The complex employed roughly 2,000 workers, all part of one continuous operation,
smelting raw iron, then transforming it into an ever-expanding range of finished products, almost none of which had anything to do with each other on the surface. Cotton textile machinery, starting in 1825, power looms from 1827, mechanical presses from 1828, glass polishing equipment from 1834, steamboats built at Seraing's own shipyards, and beginning in 1836, railway locomotives, building directly on the success of Lebel, completed at these very workshops the year before. Most industrial operations of the era specialized narrowly, focusing on one product line and mastering it. Cockerill did the opposite. He built an operation that could design and manufacture almost anything mechanical that 19th century Europe needed, and he did it all under one roof on one stretch of riverbank. His method was relentless and pragmatic. Acquire the newest machines coming out of England, study them carefully, take them apart if necessary, and use them as templates to build improved, competitively priced versions for the European market. It worked because of one simple economic reality. Belgian labor cost less than British labor. That meant Cockerill's factories could match British engineering quality while consistently undercutting British prices, giving his products an edge across the continent. By 1829, that edge had become impossible to ignore. King William I of the Netherlands himself traveled to meet personally with Cockerill that year, reaffirming the crown's support for his industrial ambitions face to face. Pause on that for a second. This was a king meeting directly with the son of a blacksmith who had once been imprisoned by a Russian czar for missing a deadline. For a family that had spent decades chasing stability across half of Europe, that royal audience marked just how far the Cockerill name had traveled, and how much further it was about to go.
Then, in 1830, the ground shifted beneath him. The Belgian Revolution broke out, and the country that would become Belgium declared its independence from the Netherlands. For Cockerill, this was deeply personal risk, not just distant political history. His operations had depended in part on Dutch royal backing, the very relationship he'd cultivated so carefully for over a decade, going all the way back to that partnership with the Prince of Orange in 1816. When Belgium separated from the Netherlands, that entire foundation of royal support vanished almost overnight. It's worth imagining what that moment must have felt like. An operation employing thousands of workers, a factory complex built up over more than a decade, suddenly cut off from the political relationship that had helped make it all possible in the first place. Many industrialists in his position might have folded, or scaled back, or waited cautiously to see how the new political situation would settle. Cockerill didn't wait. By 1835, he had restructured his affairs and become sole owner of the Seraing works outright, no longer reliant on any foreign monarchy's patronage at all, a self-made position of independence forged directly out of crisis. That same remarkable year, 1835, Cockerill also helped found the Banque de Belgique, stepping directly into the financial architecture of this brand new nation. And of course, 1835 was also the year Lebel rolled out of his workshops, Belgium's first locomotive, and a symbol of exactly the kind of industrial confidence the young country needed. It's worth pausing on that. In a single year, while managing serious business risk from a lost royal relationship, Cockerill helped launch a national bank, and his factory produced the very machine that would come to define his adopted country's industrial identity for generations. This wasn't luck. It was the pattern of his entire life playing out one more time. Instability met immediately with decisive, ambitious reinvention. The final journey. But even Cockerill's remarkable instincts couldn't outrun every crisis forever. In 1839, a banking crisis struck Belgium, and Cockerill's sprawling company, by then employing around 30,000 people, an almost unimaginable number for a single industrial enterprise at the time, found itself on the edge of bankruptcy. Cockerill made a decision that says everything about his character. Rather than retreat, cut losses, or hand the problem to someone else, he set out personally to find new capital, traveling to Russia in 1840 to prospect for new markets and secure the funding his company desperately needed to survive. Think about that choice. A man in his late 40s, already one of the most successful industrialists in Europe, still willing to travel personally across the continent, chasing one more deal because the alternative was watching everything he'd built come apart. The trip was grueling. On his way back, traveling through Warsaw, he fell seriously ill. Accounts from the time describe a sudden severe fever, most likely typhus, the kind of illness that spread easily along the difficult travel routes of the era. He died in Warsaw on June 9, 1840, in the arms of his wife, at just 49 years old. He left no children behind. His will divided his industrial holdings among family members and trusted managers scattered across several countries, and specifically instructed that the Seraing works be sold in order to settle the company's outstanding debts. But remarkably, the story didn't end there.
Cockerill's operation had grown so large and employed so many people that the Belgian state itself stepped in rather than let it simply collapse. Faced with the prospect of roughly 30,000 jobs disappearing all at once, the government purchased the company's assets, and in 1842 it was reorganized as a state-backed enterprise, carrying his name forward long after the man himself was gone. In 1867, 27 years after his death, Cockerill's body was brought back to Seraing. In 1871, a memorial was unveiled there in his honor, standing near the very grounds where a bishop's château had become an industrial empire. A second monument was raised in Brussels, at the Place du Luxembourg, honoring not just Cockerill himself, but the industrial workforce his vision had helped create. At the time of his death, those who had known him described him with a phrase that says as much about his character as any statistic could. He had a reputation as a humanitarian employer and as the founder of Belgian manufacturing itself. Think about the full arc of that life. A blacksmith's son, born in a small English mill town, dragged across Europe as a child by a father chasing opportunity that never quite arrived, a teenager running a factory, a young man marrying into industry, then partnering directly with a future king, a builder who turned a bishop's summer palace into the industrial wonder of Europe, a risk-taker who rebuilt his fortunes after a revolution stripped away his royal backing, and finally, a man who died far from home, still working, still trying to save what he'd built, even as it slipped from his hands. The company he founded would outlive him by more than a century and a half, evolving again and again through wars, mergers, and entirely new industries. Yet somehow, the Cockerill name never disappeared. It's still there today on the same stretch of the Meuse River where it all began. That's the true measure of what John Cockerill built. Not just factories, or locomotives, or a fortune, but something durable enough to survive its own founder. This is Belgian Retrotech, exploring the machines that built Belgium. If you're enjoying this series, subscribe. There's plenty more Belgian industrial history still ahead. In the next episode, we're heading underground, into the coal mines that fed Cockerill's furnaces and powered Belgium's entire industrial rise. See you in the next one.